Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We are on episode 10 of Moriarty the Patriot, The Two Detectives Act 1. Of course it's an Act 1. But man, the last two episodes, A Study in S, I wanted to point out, some of you have noted in the comments, I really liked that. And Moth, I'm going to quote you too. I made my little note here. But I wanted to quote some of you in the comments talking about A Study in S because the Sherlock story is A Study in Scarlet. But one of you noted, and I'm sorry I can't remember your name at this exact moment, I should have wrote it down, but noted that was it a study in Scarlet or a study in Sherlock? Because it seemed like Moriarty was really studying to see if Sherlock was worthy of becoming a player in his grand scheme. Okay. I wanted to quote Moth from Patreon saying that William was basically checking, he used the entire events of episode 8 and 9 to basically check the star compatibility, the star sign compatibility with him and Sherlock. It was a great comment. I laughed so hard at that. I snorted my drink. It was great. But I was like, oh, it's so true though. Because Moriarty's over here being like, obsessing over Sherlock, and like Moran and Will and Lewis and them were like, what are you doing? So I love this budding relationship between Sherlock and Moriarty, and Sherlock doesn't even realize it's really Moriarty behind it all. He was offered the potential to find out that it was Moriarty in the last episode, and he turned it down because it meant he'd have to kill someone. And that totally gained Watson's trust. And I love Watson. He's great. He's such a great character in this. He's a wonderful addition. Him and Sherlock are just wonderful together. And so I love it. But I don't know. The Two Detectives. So technically this first season was only 11 episodes, correct? So this is technically the penultimate episode of season 1. Leading into the end of season 1, and then we start season 2. So I'm probably not going to, Funimation doesn't list them as two different seasons. It's just one season all the way through, and they're just different cours. So I'll probably on YouTube and Patreon just keep it all in the same season. But knowing that it's the end of the first season, I'm pretty excited for this episode. But yeah, so what has old William got in store for Sherlock, and why does he want Sherlock being the consulting detective in all of this? I'm assuming he's trying to just play Sherlock to solve some of the crimes while they're off doing other things. Someone has to be the White Knight, right? And he's painting up Sherlock to be that. But I don't know. I feel like William is still underestimating Sherlock and thinking that he's not a threat, but we know as the audience, especially if you've read Sherlock stories, that Sherlock is a threat. So I'm curious. I'm very curious. I'm assuming now some of you have commented that the crimes are going to get a little more elaborate because you've got Sherlock on the case, who is a legit detective and can solve cases. So we shall see, right? But I'm pretty excited, y'all, to start this episode and get into this and see what shenanigans we go down with Watson, Sherlock, and old Mrs. Hudson. I love Mrs. Hudson. She's great. But let's start this episode here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh, I want to see that preview so bad, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it because we need to just wait. Oh my god. This episode! Holy cow! Holy cow! Oh my gosh! I was really feeling bad for Watson and was mad at Sherlock for there, and then Sherlock, like a dog seeing a squirrel outside his window, finding Moriarty. Oh my god. The shipping between and he calls him Liam. The Shirliam shipping could not be any more pronounced. What? Oh my god. Oh my god. That's just, oh my gosh. Okay. All right. We need to talk about this. We need to talk about this episode because this is the Two Detectives. I hope Watson's okay. It's going to be really hard for me not to wait a couple days to watch the season finale here because that cliffhanger, what? I'm recording this really late at night, so I'm not going to watch it tonight, but I don't know if I can wait a week. I can't. No way. Oh, okay. So what is going on? Right. Okay. we need to go through this episode. And getting into Sherlock's mentality. So Moriarty's plan, I was curious about what his plan was in the last episode, like what was the point, but it's all pretty clear now. The point was to have Sherlock solve this case that was of high profile, and by solving the case, all of a sudden everyone's barking down his door trying to get him to solve their own cases, but their cases are like mundane little cases, and it's just wearing Sherlock out. And so the point was to get him to do all these tiny little mundane cases that would distract him so that Moriarty and the others could go do their high profile noble cases and Sherlock would be occupied. All makes sense now. It all makes sense. And Sherlock's gotten frustrated with it because he's like, I don't want to solve these little cases. I want to solve the big mysteries, the ones that are actually important and that give him a thrill, that have like significance to him. I mean, the other cases I'm sure were important as well, but I love the green that's with Sherlock, and usually green and reds in this series are like evil colors, but in this, like in the dream, he does shoot Hope. And Watson's not there to stop him. And he shoots him to get the information to find out the answer to the mystery. And it's kind of interesting because that goes against his whole thesis in the last episode. He's like, I'm not going to shoot you because what point would that be? It wouldn't. The fun part of solving the mystery is solving it, not getting the answer handed to you. But in his dream, he wants the answer so badly, and he's desperate for it. Like, this whole episode just shows like how Moriarty's plan is just deteriorating Sherlock and just whittling him down. It's so sad because Sherlock is such a fun character, and he's so charismatic and energetic, and here he's just whittled down to where he's just exhausted and glum and brooding. And Watson's even noticed it. He's like, Sherlock's acting weird. So I'm still so curious, like, what the deal with Watson is. I don't know. And what the deal on the train was, because Moriarty and it couldn't have been Moriarty and Lewis because they were right there talking with him. So there has to be somebody on the train that's killing people. But I don't know. The question is, Lewis and Moriarty seem surprised that Sherlock was there. So clearly this doesn't seem like a plan. However, it could be that the man inside the cart was getting murdered and they murdered him and left to go eat lunch, and Sherlock just happens to be there because Lewis is very unhappy that Sherlock is there. Lewis is having none of this. We're all sitting here as the audience like being like, Sherlock, William, flirt all you want. And Lewis is having none of it. He's the younger brother that's like, I am not going to be the third wheel while my big brother goes on a date. No. But this banal mystery's being solved. He's like, I want to solve a much bigger mystery. Like, Sherlock just craves that. And it's very similar to other adaptations that he just wants to solve the mystery, not these little trivial things as he calls them. So yeah, we get into him smoking and just the smoke. And I guess it is just cigarettes, but like the smoke and everything has like a kind of hallucinogenic feel to it, where the smoke is just, and that's the part I hate, the smell of cigarettes. So just the idea that this room is just, there's no ventilation, it's just clogged with smoke. No. And Watson's like, it's bad for your health, but he's trying to piece it all together, and he just doesn't have enough information to connect the dots fully, right? He doesn't have enough information, but he does the bluff and guesses it. I'm like, oh, you figured it out. Oh, ho, ho. But then Moriarty throws it right back at him. He's like, well, but if I was, wouldn't that just spoil it? If I just told you outright, isn't it your job to figure out how I did it? Baiting him, just throwing the line and reeling him in. And he's like, yes. And I love the visual metaphor when he's playing the violin and it just keeps rotating into the shadows and out of the shadows, and Hope and Sherlock are in blue, but it starts to get greener and greener, and the gun Sherlock has is red. Like the gun, it's connected to Moriarty. Like Moriarty is constantly connected to the color red, and here the eyes of Hope and the blood from his mouth, and the gun in Sherlock's hand is red too. Like they're all instruments of Moriarty. It's so good. It's so good. And then he he shoots the wall, but he shot it multiple times. Like, he was just letting off. Like, him with the violin, the string breaking, just showing that that was the last straw, that Sherlock just could not take anymore. Ah. And then him just getting so frustrated. And he's like, if I had shot him, would I have found out? I hate seeing Sherlock like this. I hate seeing him like desperate and so glum. It's so sad. I hate seeing him like this. I don't like it at all. And I like that Mrs. Hudson and Watson instantly come where they hear the gunfire. She has a pot and a pan in her hand. Mrs. Hudson has like a pot on her head and a pan. She's ready to go all out. Girl is ready to defend. I love that. That's amazing. And then Lestrade was getting his like shave upstairs, and he comes down thinking it's something. Like, still has the shaving cream on his head. Oh my God. I love it. And so then Sherlock's like, I just want to find any aristocrats that have been killed. And so as far as we know, the man that was killed at the lakeside was a natural death. And it is awkward because Watson's trying to vouch for Lestrade and him being like, I don't know why Sherlock's so quiet. And he's quiet because he's frustrated. And he is being a little bit childish to Watson and them. And I don't like that he calls Watson useless. That wasn't nice. Watson's like your bestie and trying to help you, and you're pushing him away. And I don't like that at all. I felt bad for Watson when he did that, because it's like Watson's trying to help him and him saying, I'm profoundly disappointed in you. That's like, you know what? When you make a parent mad, or you make a coach mad, or like a mentor or somebody, like someone that's older than you, and you make them mad and they don't get angry, they just go, I'm disappointed. That's worse. It's worse for them to say I'm disappointed in you than to just be mad and yell at you. That's even worse. It makes you feel worse doing that. And I like that Watson gets on the train. But here's the thing. He got on the train and locked himself in the car, just like the one guy was locked in the car as well. Interesting. So he was locked in the car too. So what's the deal? These people were locked inside the cars and no one could get in, but they couldn't get out. So what's the deal? Okay. I'm trying to look here in the crowd getting aboard the train to see if there's anything. And Sherlock being frustrated that came to York. I'm not seeing anything. And Lestrade gets kind of onto him for not finding a murder in the natural death. And he's like, I'm going to peace out, Sherlock. So clearly Sherlock has been frustrated before. I kept saying we see Moriarty and Lewis in the train car, but we don't. Go to hell with your death by illness. And then Watson's like, you're acting like a child. You have to stop acting frustrated because things didn't go your way. Yeah, Sherlock is a little bit immature in this, which he's been in other adaptations. But yeah, and he blames him and he holds the cigarette like a gun. And then, yeah, he just flexes his frustrations about Hope. And Watson's like, you really weren't going to shoot him, right? And Sherlock's like, yeah, I would have, probably, maybe. But he doesn't outright say it. He's just like, I should have shot him when I could, and then I could have figured out the mystery. And Watson doesn't realize that this is plaguing him so much. And Sherlock doesn't explain. Well, he kind of explains, I've been one step closer to a huge mystery. And Watson putting his bowler down and saying he's disappointed, like, that's just, you're a worthless scoundrel. Oh. If you wish to become a murderer, do it without me. Pursue your beloved mysteries or whatever else you like, but do it alone. Aww. I don't want him and Watson. Oh, and he throws in the train ticket. I don't want him and Watson to be apart. And Sherlock's like, what's the matter with him? It's like, well, you were a douche. That's why he was mad. And so we don't see William or Lewis. That's so sad, though. I don't like seeing Sherlock and Watson mad at each other. I don't like that at all. No. So he went by the cart that one guy might have been in. Oh. And then saying it's locked. And when he looked in, he saw Watson sitting there looking frustrated. And then he was like, well, fine, I'll go get some food. And I was not expecting him to see Moriarty. I was not expecting Moriarty and Lewis to be on this train. Nope, not at all. Yeah, but when he looked over, like, the giddiness on his face, and calling John a woman, it's like, dude, you're technically the one acting all ridiculous. But then he looks up, and I love the look in his eyes, and he gets the blush! He gets the damn blush! And then, you know, Lewis and Moriarty are just hanging out, and then and then Lewis's face. And I love that when he looks at Moriarty, Moriarty's like barely concerned. His eyes are just barely, they're just like, oh, like what a development this is. Like, he doesn't look surprised. He's very, Moriarty has a very stone cold poker face, but Lewis does not have a poker face. Lewis is very much like, why are you here? Yeah, and Lewis is like, oh my God, it's Sherlock Holmes. It's him. What's he doing here? This is bad. And Moriarty's like, oh, well, look at you. It's the guy from the Noatic. We haven't been manipulating your, events surrounding you at all. And then, yeah, I love that Sherlock is like a bigger character than Moriarty. He's like broader. He has bigger shoulders. And then Sherlock's like, well, I wanted to have Lestrade take credit for all of it. But somebody leaked it out. And Moriarty's like, oh, imagine that. And then, yeah, he basically reveals that the whole point is for him to get more clients, so he's distracted. And I like that Sherlock is so open with Moriarty. He's like, you're a mathematician. You understand me. And I like that Lewis tries to interrupt him, and he's like, begging your pardon, but we are finishing our meal, so scurry away, sir. And Sherlock's like, I'm trying to have a conversation. And he's like, well, you haven't even been served your dessert yet. So how can you leave? And he's like, just let me talk to you. And Lewis is like, no. And I like that William's not dumb. He knows that Lewis was trying to push Sherlock away, but he's like, oh, we don't mind. We were just getting to grow bored. And Lewis is like, excuse me, brother, but what? And so Moriarty, he is just as much interested in Sherlock as Sherlock is interested in him. Sherlock may be a little bit more interested than Moriarty, but Moriarty is fascinated by Sherlock because he's like, oh, a smart person like me. And then Sherlock just lays it all out of how he's figured out the connection between Enders and Hope. But here's the question. Was it all a bluff? Because he said, I think it was, because he, to our knowledge as the audience, he hasn't been back to talk to Hope since then. So he made all of that up about seeing Hope again and was just throwing it out there to see what Moriarty's reaction would be. So the question is, does Sherlock really believe that it could be Moriarty and he's just feeling him out? Or was it just a joke? Because the scene makes it seem like it was just a joke, but Lewis is terrified because, no, this man's figured it all out. And he's like, nah, Sherlock's like, oh, no, I know there's a mastermind. The guy made a proposition and there was a bargain. After Hope was taken to custody, I went to visit him, and he secretly told me something. The name of the mastermind. And Lewis is like, well, shit! No! And I love that it instantly turns green. Moriarty has a stone cold poker face. He's let nothing slip by. He's like, you were his benefactor, weren't you? And he's like, yeah. Like, just William James Moriarty. And, the greens and the reds. And Lewis is like, should we kill him now? And I like that Lewis looks down. It's like a butter knife, though. I'm like, dude, you ain't gonna stab him with a butter knife. But he looks down like, should we kill him now and get him out of the way? Is he a threat? But Moriarty doesn't seem to be phased, because Moriarty, he's about to utter this line. I'm at this point where Lewis is trying to piece it all together. He's like, what do we do? He's like, you rascal, I should eliminate you before you are beyond our control. Yeah, Lewis has got the right idea, because Holmes is going to be beyond their control, I feel. And Moriarty's like, indeed, that's an amusing assertion. However, it is impossible to prove that I did not do something. Also, it would be your job to prove that I did, would it not? Aren't you the one? He's going to throw his words right back at him. Isn't the point to solve the mystery, not just have the answer handed to you? And Sherlock just laughing, being like, I'm kidding. That would be a case of probatio diabolica after all. I'm curious. Comment down below what probatio, I might have to look it up, but what probatia, I'm going to look that up actually. Now that we're saying here, probatia. Okay, here we go. I'm like, what does this mean? A legal requirement to achieve an impossible proof, where the legal system would appear to require an impossible proof. Okay. The remedies are reversing the burden of proof. Okay, so yeah, evidence will prove the existence of something, but lack of evidence fails to disprove it. Okay, so yeah, he's like, this is technically like a legal thing. You know, it wouldn't work out anyway, but sorry. It's like, no, you figured it out. Ah! He's like, still. Huckleberry's like, what are you talking about? I was thinking how great it'd be if you were the sharp-witted mastermind. So here's and the light shines on Moriarty. It's like the polar opposite. Like before when Sherlock said the line about once you reduce all the other theories, whatever you're left with has to be the truth. The light shine on Sherlock. But now he's like, wouldn't it be something if you were the diabolical mastermind? And the light shines on Moriarty and his eyes. He's like, oh, like you're speaking my language, sir. Oh, that was the line. That was the sparkle in his eyes. Like, oh, I would be on center stage. I would be the mastermind. And then he's like, oh, and I love it when he throws the arm up on the chair. Lewis is like, are you freaking serious? And then he's like, catch me if you can, Mr. Holmes. Oh, with that gleam. I may have just fangirl. Oh, and Sherlock's like, the sparkle in his eyes. Would that satisfy you to hear me say that, Mr. Detective? It's like, your flirting is beyond. It's over. There's no heterosexual explanation for that. No. He's like, you're the best. He's like, oh, I see my joke was well received. Ha ha ha. You and I are seriously going to get along famously. And they're both like leaning in towards each other, like over dinner. And Lewis is like, I am the ultimate third wheel in all of this. And then Lestrade comes into cockblock like you do and getting introduced. So he says Moriarty's family's second son, William, and his adoptive younger brother, Louis. So I guess, yeah, to make the story back from episode 2 work, they did say that, because it is William. It's still William, same name. Funny how that works out. But then Louis is the adoptive brother. So I guess if people had commented and been like, well, the Moriartys only had 2 sons. Louis is the adoptive one. Because they realized they did the charity. Yep. Okay. Makes sense. And Louis is like, I can only nod right now. How much does he know about us? Yeah, that's... Louis is thinking of all the good questions that you should be asking, but Moriarty has just been like swooned by Sherlock wanting him to be a diabolical mastermind. Okay, so there's footprints everywhere, going in and out all over the place. Right? Footprints abound. And yeah, I heard a sound from a neighboring compartment. And I came to see what the matter was. So, okay. There's like blood everywhere, like he's been stabbed. And it's on his briefcase. But his drink and everything was... Oh. Interesting. We don't know, and it's locked. Yeah, he's dead. Like, he's dead. He's all kind of messed up. And then Moriarty is like, it is clearly a murder. Nah. So, Liam. I like these already. He's already calling him Liam. You have nothing to do before we reach London, do you? He's like, yeah. Shall we have a contest to see who can find the culprit first? What are you talking about? This is a murder case, not a game. It's like, murder cases are games to Sherlock. That's the point. Sherlock treats it like a game. And he's like, well, that might be interesting. Sure. Why not? The case appears to be a bit more complicated. And then, yeah. So, why has he been shot? Or stabbed? What's going on? What is this? I don't like this. I don't like the fact that we don't know what's happening between these characters, but the idea that our two detectives are going to be Moriarty and Sherlock trying to solve this case before they reach London. Okay. What? What? I'm so fascinated, y'all. Oh man, it's gonna be hard. And the thing is, I'm like recording this late at night and I'm gonna be out of town the next 2 days, so I'm not gonna be near my computer, so I'm not gonna be able to watch it until I get back. Boo! No! So, gosh, this has probably been my favorite. It's been one of the most frustrating episodes because of how Sherlock was treating Watson. And it's like, and you know, part of you knows that Sherlock didn't mean it. He was just frustrated because this has like been nagging at him. So maybe him working with Moriarty will get him out of his funk. I'm curious to know how this is going to go down. Like what the heck's going on? But it seems like, yeah. So I didn't like seeing Watson getting shoved aside like that and him getting frustrated with him. But on the other hand, the banter between Moriarty and Sherlock is just wonderful. Catch me if you can, Mr. Holmes. Oh, ooh, yep, amazing, amazing. So yeah, this episode was great. It's one of my favorites so far, if not my favorite. So I hope you all enjoyed that reaction. I'm super curious to know your thoughts down below about this episode. But oh my gosh, so. Next episode's technically the season finale, the mid-season finale, if you view it all in one. So I'm really curious to know in 23 minutes how we're solving this. I'm hoping Watson's okay and what's going to go down. So thank goodness it's like an aside on his neck. But I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. Please don't spoil me, but I hope y'all fangirled as much as I did with this interaction because it was glorious. So in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Moriarty the Patriot.